Hello, and welcome back to the Follow Your Spark podcast. It's your host, Gina here, and I'm coming on for a very special solo podcast episode today. I just got back from an incredible 2-week-long pilgrimage to Italy, my ancestral homeland, full of drumming and chanting and singing and connecting in community. And it was an absolutely life-changing experience. I had the pleasure and honor of meeting and learning from some incredibly talented musicians and dancers, sharing these ancient practices, instruments, songs, and music that has been passed down from generation to generation to generation that they are doing their best to keep alive, because a lot of these styles and traditions are dying out because people aren't carrying them on. So I'm so grateful to have been able to experience that magic that was largely in part possible because of these people who had the courage to pursue this path, the courage to follow what was calling to them, that spark of purpose, passion, inspiration, joy. And I'm so grateful for people who say yes to that, because I know the impact that that has in the world, that it's had on my own life, and that I see it have on communities and societies everywhere I go, which is exactly what I wanted to talk about today. If you're listening to this podcast and you feel called to that path of the pilgrim, of the visionary, of the trailblazer, the person who is called to leave behind the status quo and societal expectations and the path of what's reasonable and logical and perfectly laid out of what society expects, and you are called to a different life, a life where you are saying yes to the sparks that are deep in your heart and soul calling you forward, what's lighting up your curiosity, your passion, your interest, your purpose, and you're willing to live your own life, to blaze your own path. This podcast episode is for you, my friend. We are going to talk all about what I believe it takes to answer that call, what obstacles might get in your way as you navigate that journey, and what are the tools that could support you most on the path, and what treasures are waiting for you if you say yes. If you say yes to following your heart's desire, purpose, and passion, and you're willing to navigate the unknown and blaze your own path. So if that is the kind of life that calls to you, stick around. You're going to love this episode. Okay, so as I was thinking about what I wanted to share in this episode, I decided to pull some oracle cards to open up to intuitive guidance. And I used this Archetypes deck by Kim Crayons. If you're watching this on YouTube, I'll be sharing some of the cards here so you'll get the visuals. And if you're listening to the audio and you want to see that, come back on YouTube and check it out. And I did this because, and what I'll talk about as we continue, is that one of the most important things I found on this path is being able to open up to your intuition, to hear signs from spirit, from the universe, from your heart, from your inner wisdom. So that's why I invited that intuition in today to guide me in this conversation. So I'm excited for what came up. It was definitely spot on. So the first card I pulled is about what is the desire? Why do people feel called to this path of the unknown, this path of stepping out of your comfort zone, of choosing an alternative lifestyle, of taking a leap of faith, of taking a pilgrimage? So the card that I pulled is one called the riddle. And if you're not watching this riddle card looks like a knot. And what came up for me when I saw this card is so often, and I've seen this in my clients again and again, and I've witnessed this in myself, that there's this deep yearning for something more, this desire and awareness that however I'm living life in this moment is not quite it, that there's more available to me and there's something inside of me that knows that. So if you're listening to this podcast and you can relate to this, you're not alone. And it's okay if you don't know exactly what that calling is. That's why the card is called the riddle. So if you're, wanting to make a vision board or wanting to imagine the life you want to create and it feels a little hazy, it feels a little uncertain, that's okay. You're in a perfect spot. And I know it can feel frustrating when you don't have that clarity of, oh, I don't know exactly what's next. I don't know if I want to quit my job or move to Italy or, go on a road trip. I'm not sure what that is. I just feel this riddle, this mystery, this longing. I know it can be frustrating, and I invite you to trust the process and go on this journey with me. The next card I pulled is what is required to say yes, to feel the riddle and the mystery and the yearning and the longing, and to be willing to step towards that. So the card I pulled is the offering. And when I saw this card, what immediately came to mind is that what's required to answer this call is a sacrifice. It requires sacrificing your old life. It often requires sacrificing comfort, sacrificing what's known and what's familiar. And it's an offering. It's an offering to spirit and the universe that says, I'm willing. I'm willing to give something up in order to receive what's next for me. It's that reciprocity of give and take, of expansion and contraction. So if you're listening to this, I'm curious what you're willing to offer in exchange for pursuing this path, pursuing this calling, whatever that calling is for you. So to share a little bit more from my own journey, the riddle, for me, I have been called to music my entire life. I've been a drummer since a very young age. I played drum set, then I played taiko drums. I've experimented with different drums over the years. So I've always had this deep call for music and drumming. It's like if I go to a parade and I see a drum team passing by, I will often be moved to tears because there's something in my bones, my blood, my DNA that resonates with that so deeply. And I've tried to answer that call in different ways, like exploring all these drumming, these percussion modalities. And it's been a riddle as to how does this play a role in my life? What role does this play in my life? And it's grown and evolved over the years and expressed itself in different ways. So the past couple years, I discovered frame drums. And when I did, I discovered Alessandro Belloni, who is a world-renowned Italian frame drummer. And as someone who comes from Italian ancestry, a seed was planted of, wouldn't it be amazing to go on an ancestral pilgrimage to Italy? And at first that was even disconnected from drumming. I just had that thought, this seed of I want to go to where my family is from. And my family is primarily from Naples and Calabria and Bari, that region. So I wanted to take this ancestral trip. And then, I planted that seed. I kind of let it go and believed that I would be called to that when the time was right. And then I found frame drumming, I found Alessandra, and I started practicing with her. And then I saw her put out this trip to Sicily, this 2-week trip that was all about connecting with the land, connecting with the music, connecting with the style of drumming. And I immediately felt this yes. And at the time, I can't remember if it was December or so of 2024, I had no intentions of going on a big trip in the next year. So the offering for me was, can I trust that I can make this work? Can I trust that I can take 2 weeks off of work, that I can come up with the additional funds needed for a trip like this? What am I willing to sacrifice? Am I willing to let go of the unknown and believe that I can figure it out? And I said, yes. I said, I will figure this out, whatever that means. And I committed to going on this trip. The next card I pulled was about what are the challenges or the obstacles that show up on the path? And the card I pulled is one called the comic. And if you're not looking at this on YouTube, the picture is kind of funny. It's like a picture of a cat with a party hat on and some colorful lines emanating out from this cat. So when I saw this, I was like, what is this about? The essence of this card, the comic, is it's about being a remedy for all that ails us. And that in this world, we can be faced with so many challenges, so much darkness, and that humor and joy can be a healing balm for that pain. So when I think about how this shows up as a challenge, I think that many people And I see this in my clients. I see this, show up in people that I know can get very overwhelmed and bogged down with the challenges of their own everyday life and existence, as well as the intense challenges that we are all facing in the world and the collective in this particular moment in time, and truly always. There's always some kind of darkness and some kind of pain that is existing externally. And it might feel like amidst all of that, who am I to prioritize joy, to prioritize passion, to prioritize doing something that feels meaningful and important to me, even if it might, quote unquote, serve no purpose. And I see in our society that we are so conditioned to productivity, to chasing achievements, to having measures of success that we can show other people to feel valuable and worthy and like we have a place in this world, that it can be so challenging to carve out time and space for other things, for art, for creativity, for music, for dance, for all of these healing balms that people in the past, all these ancient traditions, they knew how important things like this were. They knew how important practices like this were, coming together in community. And I see that in many ways, so many of us have lost that connection and lost that priority because we're so addicted to our phones and addicted to work that it's really hard to fight against that pull of society and put a stake in the ground and say, no, I'm going to prioritize these other things that are calling to my heart. So that's what I see the comic coming in as, this encouragement and reminder and invitation that this matters. Joy matters, laughter matters, humor matters. It's a healing balm in this world for yourself in your own life, as well as the collective society. So again, I'm curious of if you feel like you're in a riddle right now, if you feel a deep yearning for something more, ask yourself, what are you willing to offer? What sacrifice are you willing to make? Are you willing to sacrifice scarcity mindset? Are you willing to sacrifice and offer time? Are you willing to offer energy? What are you willing to offer? And in this card, they talk about that a root part of sacrifice is also sacred. So knowing that when you give up something, you're calling in the sacred. And then with the comic, are you willing to believe that that matters? That your joy, your happiness, your passion, it matters in this world and it's valuable and necessary. So like I said, when I was thinking about this trip, on one hand, there was a voice that came up that was like, are you really going to take 2 weeks off of work? Can you prioritize this? Is it safe to prioritize this? I feel like that's an ingrained question and pattern that comes up in us. Is it safe to slow down? Is it safe to take a break? And I reassured myself that yes, 100% it is, because I know what has happened for me in the past of when I followed those sparks, when I made time for Peru, when I went on a year-long road trip, when I make time for music and dance and creativity, how much that enriches my life. So I told myself when that voice came up that this trip will help me bring in so much more love, success, abundance, fulfillment. It will not take away from that. So believing in the abundance of all of that was key for me too. And I also asked for a backup card when I saw this comic. I was like, are there any other challenges that might show up or get in the way for people who want to blaze their own path? And the next card that I pulled was the mirror. And if you're not watching this on YouTube, it shows a shard of glass. And this card is about how we perceive ourselves and how so often our perceptions can be distorted. If you think about like a funhouse mirror at a carnival, it can change our shape. It can change how we look. And this is something 100% that I see get in people's way the most, that I support my clients work through, is their perception of themselves, their perception of their capabilities, their perception of what's possible. Because if we have limiting beliefs, if we think that we're not capable or this dream that we want to pursue is never going to happen, it's going to be very hard to walk that path. And I was talking to a client today about the path of entrepreneurship, especially, I feel like requires a certain level of courage, of awareness, of internal resolve that is different from having a corporate job, because there's not the stability. And granted, of course, this corporate jobs are not always stable either. And you don't have the stability of a steady paycheck coming week after week, month after month. So being able to build up how you see yourself so that you can see yourself in an empowering way, a way that believes you are capable of overcoming obstacles. You're capable of figuring things out. You're capable of holding the vision for a belief of what's possible even before it becomes manifested or you create it in this physical reality. So you have to create your own mirror, and you have to be aware of how you see yourself. Because I hear this again and again with my clients that oftentimes the thoughts that show up on our brain, we believe them to be true because we're repeating them so many times that our brains offer them to us like we're reporting the weather. Like we're saying, oh, it's sunny outside is the same as saying, oh, of course I'm not capable. I'm not capable of starting my own business. It's not possible for me to try out this new hobby. I'm never going to be good enough to dance like that, or whatever it is. These limiting beliefs and perceptions show up like they're the truth, and they're not. So we have the power, you have the power to create a new mirror, to choose the mirror that is going to reflect back your actual power and all the things that are truly available to you inside. So I invite you to simply notice when you're thinking about taking a leap of faith, when you're thinking about stepping outside of your comfort zone, what is your brain telling you? You can journal about this. You can do a brain dump and really get out on paper so that you can see and read all of the thoughts coming up, because simply bringing awareness to them is so powerful, because so often they're just playing like background music in our brain. So when we can bring them to the surface, then we have the ability to look at them through an objective lens and ask ourselves, wait, is this serving me to think this? What's the impact on me when I think these thoughts? Are these thoughts even true? And you can begin to question them. And then you can tune into your heart and ask your heart, what else could be true? What else do I want to believe about myself and what's possible? And journal on that and see what comes up and comes through. The next card I pulled was, what will help you navigate this journey? What will be the bridge that will take you across to whatever it is you are looking for? And the card that I pulled is the underworld. And it's full of worms and dirt and scary looking things. So this at first glance could be confusing as to, how is this going to help me navigate the journey? How is this going to be the thing that helps me cross the bridge? And what I got from this card is that it's all about being willing to go into the depths of what's there for us, our feelings. And this is truly one of the things that I find holds people back the most, is fear of feeling feelings. And most people wouldn't articulate this. And how that manifests, or what I notice in my clients, is people have this fear of quote unquote negative emotions. They don't want to feel sad. They don't want to feel anxious. They don't want to feel confused. They don't want to feel frustrated. We have a tendency to label all of these things as bad, as how can I get rid of these emotions as fast as possible and just feel better. So people avoid them, people resist them, people bury them. We do all kinds of things to distract ourselves from feeling feelings. And if you are on this path of a visionary, a trailblazer, someone who is walking a path that isn't perfectly laid out by society, but is one where you want to go your own way, it's likely going to bring up emotions. It's going to trigger you. It's going to bring up fears. It's going to bring up challenges. And if you're willing to face those things, if you're willing to feel those things, that's when they don't stop you, because you're willing to feel any of them. And that makes a tremendous difference. And that's why, again, this is one of the biggest skills I work on with my coaching clients is what does it mean? What does it look like? What does it feel like to actually feel your feelings and feel your emotions and be present to them? And a lot of people think that if they do that, they're going to be consumed by them. They're going to drown in them. And often the opposite happens. When we stop shoving them down and allow them to come up to the surface and be felt, that's when they can move through us with so much more ease. And I know I experienced this underworld card hardcore when I was on my year-long road trip from 2021 to 2022. When I was about 3 or 4 months into that trip, I was freaking out, to say the least. I was like, what have I done? I've dismantled my life. I just left my corporate career at Lululemon that I'd been in for the past almost 10 years and ventured out into the unknown. I felt like I unplugged from the matrix and I felt like the ground had just opened up underneath me and I was free falling. And a lot of emotions came up. And thankfully, I had people around me, coaches, healers, spiritual guides that supported me throughout that time to really be present to and navigate all the feelings that were coming up for me. And I am so eternally grateful for all of those people because it made a tremendous difference on my journey. The next card I pulled, I asked, what's the tool that could support people the most? And the card I pulled is called the unseen. And when I saw this, I was like, that is spot on, so appropriate, because what I believe the tool is that can support people the most to blaze their own path is being connected to their intuition and being connected to spirit. Because when you're walking a path that is not laid out ahead of you, it requires courage. It requires a willingness to trust what you can't see and believe in the pull, that yearning from the riddle that's calling you forward, and trust those subtle senses to help you navigate the journey. So cultivating your intuition, cultivating your connection to this inner compass, I 100% believe is the most vital skill that will support you to walk this path. And this is 100% a skill that can be cultivated. So if you're listening to this and right now you feel like you have zero connection to your intuition, or you second guess yourself often, or you overanalyze everything, you can develop this muscle. Truly, I know this is something that in the past I used to feel not as connected to and struggled to feel like I could really hear or trust. I think I always heard it, but it was a struggle to trust that inner knowing. And it's something that I've really intentionally developed and has made the utmost difference to me in navigating this path of entrepreneurship for the past 5 years and taking all of these other leaps of faith in my life. And the more that I track the evidence of following my intuition and trusting the unseen, the more I feel so incredibly supported, even when I am venturing out into the unknown. And today I was doing a session with my clients. I always do this session called the Year Ahead Intuitive Coaching Session. And we pull an oracle card spread for the whole year that has a card for every month and a theme card for the year. And then we talk through all the intuitive messages that are coming up. And this is a tool that people use all year long to stay connected to the messages that are coming through, to journal on the signs and the evidence and the synchronicities that they're seeing and experiencing and tracking this. So if you're listening to this and you're like, how do I develop this relationship with my intuition? Try that. Start a journal practice and notice, what signs are you seeing? What messages are you receiving that feel like they're coming from spirit or the universe or your heart? And if you're not noticing any, the first key is to ask for them. To ask for them in prayer or in journaling, in meditation, and put the intention out there. May I receive a sign or a breadcrumb that will help guide me to what's next. So if you're in that phase of the riddle and you're like, I have no idea what's next, maybe you want clarity about your career, or you want clarity about what you should do next in a relationship, or whatever it is, ask for guidance and then trust that you will receive it. That guidance could come through song lyrics. It could come through opening a book to a particular page and reading the exact message you need to hear that day. It could come in conversation with someone. It could come on this podcast right now. Maybe you asked for a sign about something, and something in this podcast is an answer to that. So be open to receiving those messages. And when you feel like you receive them, track them somewhere. Have a journal dedicated to this practice so that as the days go by, as the months go by, you begin to see evidence of what happens when you listen to those messages, when you have the courage to take steps out into the unknown one at a time. Because, like we talked about, fear can show up as you navigate this path. So it does feel really reassuring and has helped me develop this inner trust and sense of groundedness and safety internally by tracking this evidence. That's why this is one of the number one skills I work on with my coaching clients. So I definitely encourage you to explore a practice like this and see what comes up when you open up and invite in intuitive guidance. And one thing I'll share about this Italy pilgrimage that's related to the unseen and intuition, like I said at the beginning of this conversation, I definitely got this intuitive message that this trip was a yes. And after I put the money down, put my deposit down, I saw that Alessandra was leading another trip to Naples. So Naples is where I'm from, and was my original prayer of, I would like to go on an ancestral tour. So after I saw that, I was like, oh shoot, did I choose the wrong trip? And I kept getting this intuitive guidance of, no, this is the right trip. Don't worry, everything's fine. So I was like, okay. And then when I was on the trip, this question kept coming up, this nagging thought in my brain of like that underworld of, did I make the wrong choice? Should I have been in Naples? Why am I here? And I allowed myself to feel those feelings and notice those thoughts. And I kept checking in with my intuition, and it kept answering, no, this is where you're supposed to be. So I kept looking at the mirror that I was holding. And instead of allowing that mirror to be full of doubt, to be full of questions, I chose a different mirror, a mirror of trust, and one that helped me remember I was guided here, even if I don't understand why. And I think that's another huge piece of what is required of you if you want to walk this path of a trailblazer. And connected back to that offering, it requires you to offer up and surrender needing certainty, needing to know exactly what's going to happen if you take that step. Because that's what our brain wants. It's wired for wanting certainty. It's wired for that because of protection. It wants to know that if I make this place my home, I'm going to be protected from predators or whatever it is. So the idea of facing uncertainty is scary to the brain, and it fights against it. So if you want to walk this path, I believe that it's required of you to offer up needing to know exactly what's going to happen, and a willingness to take one step at a time and trust the process and trust the journey, even if you don't know exactly where it's going to go. And that's something that was really hitting home for me again and again throughout this trip, was how many threads were beginning to weave together that I've experienced my whole life. From the very beginning, when I started learning percussion, through my journeys with the dance over the years, through feng shui, through my connection to nature, through my connection to my mesa path, which is a spiritual path in the Andes, that there's so many overlaps between the spiritual teachings in Italy and what I was learning on this trip, that it was all weaving together in this beautiful tapestry. So all these things that I've pursued over the years that I might have had no idea of why I'm following that, why I'm being called to that, the tapestry is beginning to become a little clearer. And I still don't know the whole picture. And I probably won't be able to see the whole picture until my deathbed or beyond, And I'm okay with that. I'm willing to lean into the discovery and enjoy the journey. And that was another huge lesson and invitation I got on this trip, again and again, hammered home. Can I enjoy where I'm at right now? this spectacular moment I am witnessing and experiencing, can this be enough? Instead of constantly looking ahead and wanting to know what's next and where am I going to go and how is it all going to work out a year from now, 5 years from now, what's the end of the story? We don't get to know the end of the story. And can you enjoy the page that you're on? Can you enjoy the page that you're on and trust that you will be guided to what's next? And when you feel that spark, when you see that breadcrumb, can you have the courage to follow them? And the last card I pulled, which I love so much, is about what is the treasure available to you if you choose this life? If you choose this life where you're following those sparks of passion, of curiosity, of purpose, of inspiration, what's possible for you? And the card that I pulled is called the Flame. And it is a lit candle and a pyramid of activation up above that candle. I had to laugh because for me, what this means is that the treasure that's available to you is that your fire is lit in this life. That life force energy of chi, of Shakti is alive and thriving and shining a light emanating outwards. You are a light for yourself and your life, and everyone around you gets to experience and be impacted by the power of that light. You are a light in the darkness. You are a trailblazer, someone who is going to shine a path for everyone behind you, for everyone around you who might be inspired by you choosing to live into your passion and purpose and gifts. So this felt so appropriate. And again, ties back to what I said at the beginning of this podcast of this trip wouldn't have been possible if it hadn't been for the people who had the courage to say, you know what? I'm going to dedicate my life and my work to this music, to these traditions, to sharing this. If they had chosen a more maybe traditional path that could have been more socially acceptable in society, just some kind of day job in a corporate office somewhere, this trip wouldn't have been possible for me. And I wouldn't have experienced all of the magic that came from people having the courage to follow these passions and share their gifts. So if you are listening to this and you feel this deep yearning inside of your soul for something more, I hope you listen. I hope you listen because I know the impact that it will have on your own life and every single person around you. And if you are feeling really challenged walking that path and there's voices telling you to turn back and turn around and there's too many demons in the forest, I couldn't possibly move forward, let's talk. This is exactly what I support my one-on-one coaching clients with and what I am most passionate about anything in the world is supporting women to let go of societal expectations of the status quo that's telling you you have to live life this way and help you develop the skills and give you the tools and the courage to say yes to whatever is calling you forward so that you can truly live a life of no regrets and know that you pursued what is calling to your heart because it is 100% possible. No matter what mirror you're seeing right now or what distorted illusion your brain is trying to tell you of what you're capable of or what you're not capable of, no, you are capable of so much more than you could ever imagine. So if you want support on that journey, I offer free one-on-one clarity calls where we can talk all about that. We can talk what is the vision on your heart that's calling you forward. We can really illuminate that so that you're clear about why that matters to you to live this kind of life and see what are the obstacles getting in your way. What are the challenges and the themes that are showing up again and again that are blocking you? And then we'll go through what are the exact tools and practices that can help you have the courage to take one step at a time and pursue the path that's calling you while you enjoy this moment and find more joy, happiness, and fulfillment in where you are now than you've ever experienced before. And we'll explore what it could be like to have one-on-one support and accountability on that path, on your journey as you step into this new version of you and pursue your heart's desires. So if that kind of support is calling to you, go to ginacasbarro.com/clarity call to book a time to chat. And if you feel that yearning in your heart right now as you're listening to this, I really invite and encourage you to listen. Because, like I shared on this podcast, it's all about trusting the breadcrumbs and having the courage to follow them one step at a time. And this call is all about discovering those breadcrumbs, clarifying what you desire, and having you walk away knowing what's one step you could take that will propel you down the path that you want to go on, not the path that society is telling you you have to live. We need your gifts and passion and purpose in the world, my friend. So if you want support, go to ginacasbarro.com/clarity call. And I cannot wait to connect and hear about the dreams that are calling you forward. All right, my friends, I'm sending you so much love, and I'll talk to you soon.